So this is the view today, February 1st, 2026. I woke up to a foot of snow. Actually, it snowed all day yesterday, which was Saturday. So that's what's going on here, I guess, which is why I'm working on putting together a video. It's been, 7 months, so I'm pretty timely on this stuff, I guess. Just a lot of stuff going on. Work has kind of changed my workload and the amount of time I'm spending outside working on the airplane. So that's been no complaints. It's just what's going on with life. There's my truck. I just had to I had to rebuild the valve body in the transmission. It's that 10-speed transmission that Ford put out. Man, you thought that was the greatest thing since sliced bread, and turns out it's not. And everybody's having issues with this 10-speed transmission. If you have a Ford truck 2017 or older, don't get it. I'm looking at buying an old truck now. I'm just thinking about getting rid of this truck and just getting an old one. And then, of course, this summer, which a long time ago now, we did fly to Oshkosh. I flew with my friend Scott in his Piper Cherokee 140, which is 160 horsepower. And we set up for camping, and we got to go spend 2 or 3 days at Oshkosh checking out the sights. And then on the final night, went over to the Sling tent for the dinner, and it just downpoured. And by the time I got back to my tent, it's just covered or just full of rain, full of water. I ended up having to sleep on my cot, actually on my inflatable mattress with just a small blanket because everything else was soaked. Anyway, last time I put a video out in June, this is what it looked like. I had the engine mounted on the engine mount, and had done some painting and some other things, and so we were moving along pretty good. But then started having some delays with a lot of other things. So let's start with wiring. So one thing I noticed. And again, this is new to me, these HIC connectors that come off the Rotax engine. These are the square connectors you see here in this picture. This is what they look like once they're mounted. And I mounted mine, I brought them through the firewall. So here's how this works. These HIC connectors come through the firewall, and they're mounted inside the cabin. So I mounted mine underneath the avionics tray. And then you start bringing in your wiring from your avionics to those connectors. Now, just having so much trouble with this. I didn't like how these pen connectors were working. And so I started going through some manuals, and I noticed that on the 916 manual, you see here in this picture, they don't use those square connectors. They are using these round cannon connectors. So obviously, Rotax was having a problem with those square or rectangular connectors as well. And I guess in these new iterations or these newer engines, they're now using a cannon connector. So I chopped those off. And so I've installed these cannon connectors. You can see here, I took a picture underneath. You're looking down from the floor up at my avionics tray. And so these are the wires that you're looking at are coming from my panel and my fuel system and the other things that are involved with connecting to the HIC connectors. So once the engine is in place, this is just showing some of these braided fuel lines that I bought from Aerospace Innovations. And there's been some pretty tight connections here, but overall, those went on very well. Pretty happy with all those. That just eliminates that Rotax, I guess you could call it a mandatory fuel line change that they require you do every 5 years on the rubber lines. These are lifetime lines, so I don't have to worry about that any longer. This is a connection, or actually a sensor, that mounts to the firewall it's part of the Rotax engine. Didn't really, by the time I was ready to put that in place, there was nowhere on the firewall for me to put it. So I created this bracket that attaches to the engine mount, and it's just a plate of it's 050 aluminum, and you got some Adele clamps that are holding that in place. So that was just my solution for that. I'm also working on, in this picture you'll see, this is the lower cowling, and I created this what looks like a pallet was the original, well, it is a pallet for the Rotax engine when I received the engine, and so I just converted this into a kind of a little bit of a, I guess, a slide or a roller sort of situation where I put these arms on here where I can just push the lower cowling into place, and it's padded. So now when I'm dropping the lower cowling, it just falls right onto those two arms with the padding, and it works out real well. So it's just a nice tool to have in the hangar to take the lower cowling on and off. What you're looking at here is obviously the prop governor, as well as a connection the brackets that I made for the, I'm not going with any sort of electronic prop controller. I'm going completely with a manual, the old school blue knob controller. And so that it requires that a bracket be installed, which I just use one of the lifting eyes on the engine, and I've connected my bracket to that. And then I had to make an extended arm on the prop controller itself. On the left side there, you can see that just that whole connection now allows me to adjust the prop all the way from one end to the other. And this is just an overhead view of that. Let's see here. Okay, now I'm installing the horizontal stabilizer, the vertical stabilizer, the elevator. And by the way, this is a tool I made. You can buy these tools actually for holding washers. You kind of pop that in place, and that holds the washer while you're trying to push the bolt through. It worked out really well when I was using it for the rudder and on the elevator as well. Also put the windows on the canopy. Glued those in place with the Sikaflex. Use the primer and then the Sikaflex, and then use these straps with that blue hardboard insulation, help hold those in place. All of this went pretty well. This is the windscreen, just fitting it in place, marking it using a marker, and then I've got my Dremel tool that I'm cutting the windscreen so that it's going to fit in place. So you can see here, when I start installing it, I'm only taking out small sections at a time as I'm inching or creeping my way closer and closer to the edge of the joggle where it fits in place. So I'm not taking big, chunks out. I just do a little bit at a time and kind of ease my way into that position, and it worked out well. So once I got it dry fitted, now this is where I've obviously again primed with the Sika primer and the Sikaflex adhesive in here, and then using again the straps and the hardboard or the hard solid insulation there, styrofoam insulation. And these are the doors, the canopy doors. Just again, this is looking down from above. I use some spring clamps and also again the ratchet straps for that. Here is so this hole is part of the firewall. You're looking at it from the inside, from the cabin side, and there's a sort of a collar that goes over this. Now, the reason this hole is so big is because those hick connectors I showed you earlier have to fit through there. But then once they're through, the only thing that's in that hole or that opening are the cables, and it's just the diameter of the cables, and it's not taking up that entire, I don't know what that is, 1.5 inch, 2 inch hole right there. So what I did was I created this. You can see that the bracket. It's not really a bracket. It's like a retainer. I can't think of what you actually would call this, but it's meant to keep the organize the cables going through the firewall. And there's an upper and a lower portion. So I took a piece of old 3/8 inch fuel hose and I bent it, and then I used some epoxy putty, like a JB Weld sort of thing, and just JB welded that in place. So now it's got a nice smooth radius for those wires to rest on. And then I created a big, larger plate to go over that. And I used, so you can see here on the left where once you have the cables through there, now you can see it's really just almost cutting that hole, reducing the area of that hole by almost a half. And then I've got this putty sort of fire barrier that I'm using here that just works as a putty. And I can barely see this, but you're looking at the top left, you see that orange? That's after I put those two half pieces in place. They're screwed in place now, and the wires are through. And at the bottom, that's where the wires are fed. And then this orange is that putty you pack in place. It's fire barrier putty, almost like the caulk that you can get in a tube, but that's the fire barrier. So it worked out well. Just kind of I haven't seen anybody else do it this way, so that's kind of my thing for taking care of that. Okay, now it's time to install the wings. My friend Tim, who is also building a Sling TSi not far from me, has previously built 3 or 4 other airplanes, and he had built these cradles when it was actually for a Velocity that he built. And you can kind of see how this works. You lay the wing across here, and you've got these Harbor Freight trailer jacks that are adjustable in all 4 corners. And so this is what we use to install the wings. So all the guys came over from the EAA chapter. You can see the wing kind of sitting there on that cradle as we start to feed it in through into the fuselage and make the connections. It was a really quick process. I hear a lot of people complaining. No, we didn't freeze our bolts or put them on dry ice or anything like that. I didn't grease them up or anything heavily. I did put maybe a small film of corrosion X on my bolts. But here are the 2 things that worked well, maybe 3. The 3 were the fact that I had a big group of people there helping me that night. But I used a 3X rivet gun, which I had from my previous build projects, with the flat tip on it to push the bolts through, and a bore scope. So I'm running the air gun, pushing the bolts through, and then another guy's actually got the bore scope on the hole where the bolt's being pushed in through, or the exit side, I guess I should say, of the bolt. And so he can tell exactly where that wing spar is and telling somebody to raise or lower by adjusting those jacks. And then we just pushed all the bolts. It only took us, I think, 1 hour and 30 minutes total time to install both wings. So it went really smooth and very fast. So I was very happy with that. Now it comes time to put the Duke propeller on. This is the carbon fiber hub. It's been all assembled with the blades that are already in place. And so now it's been temporarily installed, just kind of mocking it in place to see how it looks with the spinner and the spacer. That's a 45. By the way, yeah, you're going to need a 45 millimeter spacer. The original spacer I got from Duke was 30 millimeters. So it didn't work. I had to wait for them to send me the 45. Now we're looking at upholstery. And so upholstery is like, I tell you, if I ever, well, I tell you the one thing I'd probably, what do I want to say? I don't want to build another Sling. I just don't. And I used to think I would. And I'm going to tell you this upholstery is probably the big reason why I don't. it killed me to do this, and I dreaded it. And it was a combination of nowhere to position yourself. You're constantly bent over, and you're breathing these fumes. I had a mask on, all that, but it just was it was extremely difficult. And I was talking to my buddy Tim. Like I said, he's building his. He said the same thing. He said the upholstery is a nightmare. Not that there's a problem with the upholstery itself. It's beautiful stuff. By the way, I bought this from Piranha. Didn't buy it from Sling, but it's, it's beautiful. It's just getting to it. That's the problem. Tim made the comment to me the other night as we were talking about this and sharing notes together on how, much of a chore this has become for us. He said, when I looked at the Sling, he said, I only thought about getting in it from a pilot's perspective. And he said, that was great. I could get in it perfectly because I didn't think about getting in there to work. And that's true. I mean, it's tough. I'm 6'2". It's just not fun. It is no fun. And I have procrastinated, and I know it's affected the build time just because of this upholstery. Anyway, enough of my whining and complaining. Canopy doors are on, and all the latching's done. I actually got the latch covers or the latch retainers that attached to the inside of the canopy in place, so everything was working well there. And here's a shot of pretty much with the engine almost 100% installed, missing the prop. I guess that's maybe it. I can't think of anything else. It's probably now time to start putting the fluids in it. And I got the interior upholstery done. So I've got so much work going on. I don't know when this is going to happen. Maybe a month from now, 2 months. I still need to do a weight and balance. I need to do a fuel flow test. We need to start the engine. Then I can get the airworthiness inspection. So it could be a couple months, along with what I'm going, with my workload on other projects and that sort of thing. So that's what I'm looking at. And then finally, here's just a picture of the knock event where the intercooler is and how we had to mask around that paint, the paint to get it inside the knock event. So at least looks somewhat presentable there. So, all right, well, that's the end of the video. I'm going to be putting out a big announcement soon. Got a couple big things I think the Sling community or people who are interested in slings are going to want to hear more about this. But I'll just keep it at that, and appreciate your time, and talk to you soon.